President could also get permission to record.
Who is that? Who asked?
Oh, sorry, me, Mike.
Oh, Mike, okay. Very well,
Thank you.
no problem. Good morning, everyone. Let's see. Okay. We're still missing 10 people. It's 9:30. We're going to continue chapter 11, and hopefully we're going to finish chapter 11 today. If you remember, in chapter 9 and chapter 10, this microphone is on. On chapter 9 and chapter 10 for the power, because we were not satisfied with either the efficiency of the cycle or the amount of power we're getting out, we decided to modify those cycles to improve the thermal efficiency and or increase the amount of power we're getting. That was the reason we basically modified those cycles. We're going to do the same thing on the refrigeration cycle. We're going to modify our cycle for two reasons: either increase the coefficient of performance or get more cooling for whatever reason. You know, we need more cooling, larger space if you want to cool it, or a bigger refrigerator. So for those two reasons, either or, what we do, we modify the cycle. One way to modify the cycle is called cascade cycle. Cascade refrigeration cycle is the two cycles that basically we combine together. Now, if you notice, this is a cycle A. If we cover this part, it's just a regular refrigeration cycle. If we cover the top part, same thing, this is a regular refrigeration cycle. Now, this heat exchanger plays an important role. The top part of this heat exchanger, now if this is a QH, this top part of a heat exchanger becomes the QL of that cycle. Now, if you look at this one, this bottom part of the heat exchanger, it's a QH of this cycle. This is our QL. So therefore, if you look at what is happening in this heat exchanger, we know the net result is always zero. The heat exchanged from one body to another body. So there is no other energy involved. So the amount of energy going into this has to be equal to the amount of energy going out. So this heat exchanger plays a role of an evaporator for this cycle and condenser for this cycle. Now, we know the condenser, we have to remove the heat from cycle B. So the way we remove that, we remove it with a QL from the cycle A. So therefore, I can basically write let's see. Now, let me number it first. This is 1, that's 2, 3, and 4. This would be 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now, the QL of cycle A, the QL of cycle A has to be equal to the QH of cycle B. Now, if you expand this, what is the QL of this cycle? Is the mass of refrigerant A for this cycle times H5 minus H8. That has to be equal to the mass of cycle B times H2 minus H3. Now, this relationship or this equation will help us to determine if we have one mass flow rate, we can find the other mass flow rate through these equations. Any questions? All right. The TS diagram for this is very simple. We have our point 1 here going up isentropically to point 2. That's point 3. Coming down to point 4 and go back to point 1. This is the TS diagram for cycle B, or the bottom cycle. Here, we start at 0.5, going up to 0.6 isentropically, then 0.7, that's 8, and going back to 5. As you can see, it's very simple. You put both of those cycles together on one TS diagram. Nothing too sophisticated, nothing complicated. So that would be the TS diagram. And we have we end up with two workable compressor. One QH, one QL. These two, they cancel each other. So now, let's see if we can improve the efficiency, or I mean not the efficiency, the coefficient of the performance of our cycle. Any question before I do the example? All right. Let's see. If the pressure here is 140 kilopascal, pressure 2 and 3 is 320 kilopascal. Now, you need to remember, heat exchanger do not reduce the pressure or increase the pressure. They just exchange the heat. On the other hand, the expansion valve, they reduce the pressure tremendously, but they do not exchange the heat. That's just exactly opposite than heat exchanger. One, we exchange heat. The other one, we reduce pressure, not heat. That's why we have H3 is equal to H4, H7 is equal to H8. So pressure at 2 and 3 is the same as pressure 5 and 8. So that one is also would be 320 kilopascal. At the top, we have 800 kilopascal. So this is an example, and we want to see how much improvement we have done in our COP by doing this cascade cycle. Again, the refrigerant is 134A. We go to the table and state by state, we're going to find all the value. State 1, we have P1 equal to 140 kilopascal, and X1 is equal to 1. Now, we are in the saturated table. However, what we're going to find H1 is actually H of G, and S1 is S of G. So the value of H1 would be 239.16 kilojoule per kilogram. That's one H value. The value of S1 is 0.9446 kilojoule per kilogram degree Kelvin. At state 2, we have P2 equal to 320 kilopascal, and S2 being equal to S1. Now we go to superheated table and find the value of H2. H2 in this case is 255.93 kilojoule per kilogram. At state 3, we have P3 equal to 320 kilopascal, and X3 is equal to 0. Saturated liquid table, we find H3, in this case, would be H of F, and that value is 55.16 kilojoule per kilogram. At state 4, we have expansion valve. Therefore, delta H is 0, so H4 is approximately equal to H3 and is equal to 55.16 kilojoule per kilogram. Now we're going to repeat all these 4 steps to do that cycle A. At state 5, again, I have P5 equal to 320 kilopascal, and then I have X5 equal to 1. Same thing here. H5 would be H of G. In this case, H5 value becomes 251.88 kilojoule per kilogram, and value of S5 would be 0.93026 kilojoule per kilogram degree Kelvin. At state 6, we have P6 equal to 800 kilopascal, and S6 is equal to S5. Now we go to superheater table and we find H6. H6 value is 270.92 kilojoule per kilogram. At state 7, we have P7 equal to 800 kilopascal, and X7 being equal to 0. So now we can find the value of H7 to be 95.45 kilojoule per kilogram, Now, at state 8, I have to write the same explanation. Writing expansion valve, delta H is 0, therefore H8 is equal to H7. So I'm just, since I don't have enough room, I just gonna write this equal to H8. But please do not do that because you lose a lot of point if you do it on your test. Now I have all the H values. One of the masses, the mass of refrigerant A was given it's 0.05 kilogram per second. Since I have that, I look at this relationship. I have H5, I have H8, H2, and H3, and I have the mass of refrigerant A. So the only unknown is the mass of refrigerant B. So mass of refrigerant A times H5 minus H8 has to be equal to mass of refrigerant B times H2 minus H3. If I plug everything that I have, I will find the mass of refrigerant B to be equal to 0.039 kilogram per second. Now, in order to find the QL, my QL is on the bottom cycle. So I have to be careful, multiply H1 minus H4 by mass of refrigerant B. So my QL would be mass of refrigerant B times H1 minus H4. This will give me QL value of 7.18 kilowatt if I plug the number in. Now I do have two compressors. So the total work of a compressor that I put into the cycle is a work of a compressor 1 plus work of a compressor 2. So the work of a compressor total is equal to work of a compressor 1 plus work of a compressor 2. Now, the compressor 1 is in a B cycle, so I have to multiply it by mass of refrigerant B times H2 minus H1 plus mass of refrigerant A, because the second compressor is in this cycle, times H6 minus H5. This will give me the total work of the compressor of 1.61 kilowatt. So I have my QL, I have my total work in. All I need to do, find the COP. The COP would be QL divided by work in or work of the compressor. If I plug the number in, I will get a COP value of 4.46. So as you can see, we went from the 2 point or 2.2 all the way to 4.46, more than double the coefficient of performance of our cycle. And you see that our QL in this case is very large, 0.18 kilowatt. Any questions? Something like that could be on your final exam. Do you have any questions? Or anything that you cannot read on the board that you want me to read it for you? Okay? Now, this is the most efficient way of basically increasing the COP of refrigerant cycle. There is another way we can do that, and I'm going to do it, and as you're going to see, it's going to be more complicated, difficult to figure it out, and there are equipment there that are very expensive and are very costly to maintain. And at the end of the day, it's not going to give us the efficiency that we are looking for. So that's like a closed feed water heater. This is similar to that, but we didn't get good efficiency out of it, but open feed water heater was much easier, much cheaper. This is, by the way, you can use the same refrigerant in both cycles. In that case, you would get a very large QL. You can use two different refrigerants. Depends on your application, you can use two different refrigerant and get that. Or you can use water in one cycle, refrigerant on the other cycle. That's what we call chill water system. So there are so many ways that we can do this. So we can have same refrigerant, two different refrigerant, or completely two different substances involved. Okay? Now, I'm going to keep this part. Now, as you notice, in this example, or a cascade refrigeration cycle, the refrigerant, they don't mix with each other. They are completely separate. Whether we use the same refrigerant or two different refrigerant, doesn't matter, they don't get mixed. But in this exercise, it will be totally different. Now, here, we're going to have a mixing box. Then, on this side, we're going to have a device which is a separator. We have vapor at the top and liquid at the bottom. Now, let me rearrange the number. Oops. So what is happening here, my refrigerant comes up, goes to the first compressor, and at point 2 will come out and then enter to this mixing box. Then it goes out at point 9, goes to the second compressor, come out at point 4, goes to the condenser, remove the heat, come at 0.5, and go to the expansion valve, come out at 0.6. Now, what is 0.6? 0.6 is in the mixture. Of course, this is not the TS diagram, I have to redo it. 0.6 is in a mixture, the mixture of vapor and liquid. Now, this device is a separator. In the industry, we call that flash chamber or separator. It's a device, it's a very complicated device that has in the middle of it, the mixture goes in the middle. It's like a sphere type, and that will turn in a centrifugal forces will shoot out all the liquid, and the liquid will collect it at the bottom of that flash chamber, and the liquid will come this direction. And the vapor side goes that direction. Why? Because I cannot have a mixture coming here, getting mixed with a vapor and go to the compressor. It has to be vapor. So the vapor part goes this direction, and the balance of it goes the other direction. So that's the problem. The problem is that, in this cycle is this mixing box. It's constantly break down. This is even worse. We have corrosion in it. We have a whole bunch of stuff that constantly we need to maintain it and, taking care of it. And if it doesn't work properly, it's going to ruin the compressor. So that's why we seldom use this kind of a, cycle, because it's just not worth doing it. And the headaches of maintaining it and operating it is huge. Now, as you can see, a lot of things are changing as far as the mass balance equation is concerned. Let's say here we have M9 equal to M4 equal to M5 equal to M6. That is at the top. At the bottom, we have M7 equal to M8 equal to M1 equal to M2. These are the mass flow here, all the same. The mass flow up there, the same. There are two places that we need to stay focused. One, what is happening here, and the other one right here. Now, as far as the energy balance is concerned, I have M2, H2 going into this box, M3, H3 also going to the box, comes out at M9, H9. That's this side. Now looking here, I have M6, H6 coming in. That is equal to M3, H3 going that direction. Plus M7, H7 going this direction. These are the energy balance equation for these two areas that we are mixing the refrigerant. This equation is very important. That's how we find the value of H9. Now, let's see how the TS diagram is going to look like. Now, this is at point 1, going up to point 2. This is point 3, and this is point 9. Point 9 is between point 2 and 3 as far as the temperature concerned. Then it goes up isentropically to point 4. 1 and 2 is the first compressor, 9 and 4 is the second compressor. This would be point 5. This is point 6. Now, portion of it goes this direction to connect to point 3. The balance of it goes this way with point 7. Eight, and going back to 1. Now, let me show you the direction of things going on. Obviously, 1 and 2 going up. When it gets to 2, it's coming down to point 9. Point 3 continue to get to point 9. Then at point 9, we go up to point 4. This is 4 to 5, 6. When it gets here, 6 going towards 3 direction. This is the liquid side coming that way, going to expansion valve, then to evaporator. Once again, I have only one QH, QL. This is the work of a compressor 1, and this is the work of a compressor 2. Now, if you want to solve this problem, generally, they give you the percentage of the quality at point 6, how much of it goes this way, and the balance of it goes the other way. And they give you the mass flow rate either at the top or at the bottom. And that's how you solve the problem. Now, I'm going to do an example that they didn't give us the quality and they didn't give us the mass flow rate. Now, let's see if we can solve that problem. First, do you have any question before I move forward? No? Okay. Let's say this is, again, it's 180 kilopascal. Now, keep in mind, in this case, pressure at 0.7, 6, 3, 9, and 2. They're all the same. Because they're all in the same pressure line. This is the same thing like we did in chapter 10. No matter what we did, the principle of the Rankine cycle did not change. No matter what we do here, the principle of the refrigeration cycle will not change. The compression happens isentropically. The expansion happens through the valve, so no big deal, no process there. Then all the cooling and heat removal happen at constant pressure. So that's very simple. Now, the pressure at right here in the middle is 600 kilopascal. And pressure at the top is 1.4 megapascal. Now, as you notice, we increase this pressure, we increase that pressure in order to make up for the losses, but you're going to see that we're still not going to get that much of a coefficient of performance. Now, to solve this problem, again, I'm going to just do it very quickly. Now, in our case, let's do this, that's the important part. Let's assume at the top we have 1 unit. Now, if I have 1 unit, the quality X6 go that direction from 0.7 over here. If this is X6 going that direction, the balance of it would be 1 minus X6. Coming all the way, going to the 0.2, it's all 1 minus 6, 1 minus X6. X6 will add to it in this mixing box. This becomes 1 unit, 1 unit, 1 unit, and that's the reason I did this. So with that in mind, now what we can do, we can write again at state 1. We have P1, 180 kilopascal. X1 is equal to 1. Again, we find H1 and S1. I'm going to make these things a little bit short. I'm going to run out of time. So in this case, the value of H1 becomes 242.96 kilojoule per kilogram. And of course, we're going to find the value of S1. Now, at state 2, we have P2 and S2 being equal to S1. On a superheated table, we find the value of H2 to be equal to 267.72 kilojoule per kilogram. At state 3, we have P3 and X3 is equal to 1 again, because 0.3 is located on a saturated vapor line. So this is H of G. Here also going to be H of G. H3 in this case would be 262.40 kilojoule per kilogram. I don't have any information at this point for state 9, so I leave it alone. I leave that alone. I go to state 5. So at state 5, I have P5 and X5 being equal to 0. So I can find H5 to be 127.22 kilojoule per kilogram, which that is also equal to H6 right here. Now that I have H6, I go to the table. Well, let's do the H7 and H8. At state 7, I have P7 and X7 being to 0. So H7 becomes 81.51 kilojoule per kilogram. And that is also equal to H8. So I have all those values except 9 and 4. Now, in order to do that, first thing I'm going to do is that I have H6. I know that H6 is equal to H of F plus X6 times H of F of G. Now, at point 6, I have the pressure, so I can look it up, find H of F, find H of F of G. I already have that. What's unknown? Right here. If I plug in everything, I find the value of X6 to be 0.2527 or 25.27%. So now that I have the value of that, I can go back and figure this one out through this equation. So N2H2 plus N3H3 is equal to N9H9. Now, what is N2? N2 is 1 minus X6 right here. 1 minus X6 going all the way to 0.2. 1 minus X6 times H2 plus. What is the M3? X6 going that direction. So that is X6 times H3 is equal to. What is the fraction for 0.9 is only 1, because everything here is 1 unit. That would be 1 times H9. Now I'm looking at that. I have H2 and H3. I just calculated the value of X6. What's unknown here? H9, that's only 1. So from there, I can find the value of H9 to be 266.38 kilojoule per kilogram. Now, one way I can make sure that I'm in the right track or I have not made any mistake, I compare my H9 with H3 and H2 because I'm supposed to be right between the two of them. Look at the value of H9. Look at the value of H2. This is 266, 267. What is the H3? Yeah, 262 and 267, and I'm 266, right? Between the two. So I'm in the right place. Now that I have this, I go to the table and I find S9. Because S9 is equal to S4. In this case, would be 93.93516. Now I can go to point 4, saying at the state 4, I have P4 and S4 being equal to S9. Again, superheated table. I find the value of H4 to be 284.23 kilojoule per kilogram. So again, this is not difficult or complicated. You just need to pay attention and go step by step and be careful of what you're doing. Otherwise, you really can make a big, huge mess. That's the only problem with this. Now that I have all this, so once again, I need to find, okay, I'm going to erase this. That one. My QL, since I don't have a mass, so small QL, I have only one, H1 minus H8. This will give me a QL value of 120.61 kilojoule per kilogram. My work in total is a work of a compressor 1 plus compressor 2. Compressor 1 is H2 minus H1. H4 minus H9. Please turn off your mic. H4 minus H9. So if I plug all the number in, I will get the total work of a compressor to be 36.43 kilojoule per kilogram. I have the QL, I have the work in, so my COP is equal to QL divided by work in. If I plug a number in, I get, excuse me, 3.3, that is the coefficient of performance. Now, as you can see, going through all these costly initial costs of putting a mixing box and flash chamber, going through the cost of maintaining and operating it every now and then. Then, even though that I increase that pressure from 800 kilopascal to 1.4, almost twice as much, look at the end, what do I have? About 1 point less than what I got in the previous example. And the previous example, I didn't have to go through all these headaches in order to solve that problem. So that's, the good news is something like this will never ever going to be in your final exam. So you don't have to worry about it. But I have to tell you. Any questions? Okay. Now, let's look at your refrigerator at home. See how that works. Now, your refrigerator at home has a condenser, has a large compressor, now here I have expansion valve 1, come down here. This is my refrigerator. Then I come out, come down here. This is the freezer part. Come out, going to the compressor. Oops, there's another expansion valve here. So this is basically your refrigerator at home. Expansion valve 2. Other compressor, this is our point 1, going to point 2, coming out at point 3, going to expansion valve, coming at point 4. We get the refrigeration part coming out at point 5, and we have 6 going back to point 1. So as you can see, we have 1 condenser, but 2 evaporators. 1 for refrigerator, 1 for freezer. That's how your refrigerator at home works. The TS diagram for that is very simple. Just follow the diagram. I have point 1 here going up to point 2 isentropically. This is my point 3. That's 4. This is 5. This is 6, going back to 1. It just basically is mimicking exactly the equipment diagram. Now, here is my QL for freezer. This one is QL for refrigerator. This would be the QH, and that is the worker compressor. Very easy and very simple. Now, what you need to understand what is happening in these 2 evaporators. Now, as far as the refrigerator is concerned, you will have air coming in, which is the outside air, and then very cold air going into the refrigeration part of your refrigerator. So we make the adjustment that the temperature there is about 46, 45 degrees Fahrenheit, or 15, 16 degrees Celsius, and we keep the refrigerator cold. And that's why when you open the door of refrigerator, you can see, you can feel the air stream inside of your refrigerator. It will hit your face. And that's how you keep everything cool in a refrigerator. Now, the newest model of the refrigerator, they also have water connection to it. They have water here, then they get cold water on this side. The newest refrigerator, you have a low, dispenser that you put your glass and get a cold water. So that has 2 connections, both air and, water. When it comes to the freezer, you will have similar thing. You also have air coming in and very, very cold air going to the freezer section. The temperature here is about 24, 25 degrees Fahrenheit. or -5, -10 degrees Celsius. That's why everything's in the freezer section. When you look at it, you can still hear the air blowing, but that air temperature is so cold, anything inside that freezer section is frozen solid. Now, again, the new refrigerators, we have water going in and we get ice from it as well. That's how your system works. Easy, simple, and keep in mind you have two, basically QL, one compressor, one QH. So again, there is only one mass of refrigerant throughout. So the QL total is equal to QL of refrigerator plus QL of a freezer. So that means for a refrigerator would be the mass of refrigerant. I will factor this out. Now, H5 minus H4 plus for the freezer is H1 minus H6. That will give you the total QL. As far as the compressor is concerned, the work we put in is the mass of refrigerant times H2 minus H1. COP, as always, going to be QL divided by work in or work of the compressor. Any questions? Oh, you guys are easy. You don't ask questions. That makes my life simpler. Now, let's talk about the last part of basically this refrigeration chapter. Okay. Tell me which part I can erase. I definitely don't need this.
So, Professor, I have a question. The air entering the freezer, is it just like ambient air, or is it the cold air coming from the refrigerator entering the freezer?
Well, today's refrigerant, because they're so energy efficient, what we do, we take the air from the refrigerator, take it to the freezer. Because outside air could be very hot. Old days, those air were enter these two evaporators completely separately. But we learned that we can be more energy efficient because this is already cold. It's already been like, let's say 48, 49 degrees Fahrenheit. It's easier going from 48 to 25. Mm-hmm. But if outside temperature is 80, well, in a house, it's about 75, 78. Going from 78 to 25, it uses a lot of energy. That means the compressor has to be larger, uses more electricity. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's what we do, yes. I didn't want to basically give you that because I didn't want to confuse you.
Got it. Yeah, it seemed like it would be more efficient, but I was just wondering.
Yeah, that's the way it should be. But again, my main concern was for you to understand, once we get this QL, we need to use external, resources to put them to use. Because those evaporators by itself, they're not going to do anything. They're not going to make any cooling or any freezing unless I connect water to it to make ice. I connect air to it so I can use a freezer. Same thing here. So that's my main concern for you to understand. These two evaporators or heat exchangers, they use external resources or substances coming into them in order to capture that cooling that we generate. It's the same principle when we have a power plant. If turbine by itself doesn't generate electricity, it just keep running. I have to connect the generator to the turbine to make that electricity. Otherwise, turbine runs forever and get nothing out of it. We're not crazy to waste our time to create a cycle and run a turbine and just sit and look at it. Same thing here. We're not crazy to create all of this and not connect anything to it to use what we work so hard to produce. The entire concept was producing cooling. Now, what we do with that depends on us. In case of your home refrigerator, we get two things out of it. Or as they say, we kill two birds with one stone. That's our stone, and these are the two birds that we are killing.
It's actually pretty cool to see that. Thank you.
Huh?
It was cool to see how that refrigerator system works and how it's just like one closed loop. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is, but now I'm going to show you something much clearer than that. All right, let's get rid of all of that. Now, the regular refrigeration cycle, again, we add a condenser, expansion valve, evaporator, and here we add a work put into a system. The way we did it through compressor. What happened if I remove this? And here I put heat. Heat is a form of energy. What was the purpose of a compressor? Point one, on a saturated vapor, I want to make it superheated. That's what I put work into it. Work is a form of energy, so I raise that pressure and temperature to get it to point two. Heat is a form of energy. I can accomplish the same thing with heat. Now, very old days, when I was a little kid, I was about 4 years old, I remember that we had a refrigerator that was working with kerosene. At the bottom of the refrigerator, there was a kerosene. We had to light a match to generate heat in order to have a refrigerator. Today, we have a lot of use of that. Have you ever been in an RV or rented an RV or owned an RV? Now, the RV, the recreation vehicles, they have refrigerators, small refrigerator inside of it. When you're driving that RV, the refrigerator works with the electricity generated by your engine, the engine of the car. Now, when you get to your destination and you park, you cannot run your car in order to have a refrigerator. You turn off the car, what happened to the refrigerator? No big deal. There is a switch and there is a propane tank right there. So the propane tank valve is open, it's automatically come out, it's got a, pilot, it'll turn it on and will generate heat. That heat will replace the electricity going to the compressor. And you still have the refrigerator. All these things can happen without you knowing what is going on behind the scene. So I can use this heat from so many sources. For instance, I can use it from the solar panel. Capture the heat, send it out to this, and have a refrigeration cycle. Or I can use a thermal solar. There are so many ways I can do this. One of the most popular way of doing it, do you remember we talked about chapter 10 about cogeneration? We had the Q process, the process heat, that I said you can use it for anything you want. That's exactly what I did when I designed a cogeneration system in LA Harbor College. So what we did, we put turbines to generate electricity at a lower cost than a utility company. Then we captured the heat, that process heat, then we put it in a unit called absorption chiller. That absorption chiller provides chilled water to the air handling unit at the top of every building and provides cooling for free. Because before, there was an electric chiller doing the same job that this guy is doing. But now, there is no electricity being used, so there are a lot of savings for LA Harbor College. So this has a tremendous, potential, and there are a lot of applications for it. So don't get stuck when we say it's a work that goes in, it has to be work. No, any form of energy will do. Heat is another form of energy, does exactly the same thing that the compressor will do. So that has a lot of applications. We use a lot of it in major universities. Same, our Cal State Long Beach has a cogen with absorption chiller. A lot of hospitals using that. So that cogeneration that we were talking about, you see how important it is. You can recover the heat. And when you're telling people, I'm going to recover the heat and generate cooling, they laugh at you. You convert the heating to cooling, air conditioning. How did you do that? Because you're going to tell them, hey, I'm smart and I know how to do it. And you're not. I'm just joking with you. That's how we do it. Very easy, very simple. Any questions?
So in a car, is the heat from the engine used to power our AC unit at all?
Heat from the engine doing what?
To power the AC in the car.
That's exactly what is happening in a AC system. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Your car. Yeah.
What about in electric vehicles?
What was it again?
What about in electric vehicles, like a Tesla?
Oh, that is just use electric. There's no other way. Yeah, if you have an electric car, you're really not generating too much heat. You're still generating some heat, but not enough to capture it and make air conditioning with it. So you have to use electric compressor. So the air conditioning in Tesla is different than the air conditioning in the car. Good questions. Any other questions? Okay? Now, right after the class, I'm going to send you the homework for chapter 11. Next Monday, we're going to start chapter 14. And so I don't know, it looks like that chapter 14 would be the last chapter we're going to cover because we're running out of time. It's Thanksgiving holidays and what was it? There was another holiday we had Monday that there was no class. So all these holidays and crazy things and these Zoom things are just delaying everything. I hope the next semester we go back to school and get rid of all of that. Let's keep our fingers crossed that's going to happen. In any event, that's about it on chapter 11. Much easier, much simpler than the other two chapters that we covered. And I'll see you next Monday. For those of you who have any questions or anything, stick around. I'm here. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Professor.
My pleasure. Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.